Disney's big. You don't know how big. This year marks the 100th since Walt started making animated shorts, and since then, they've become the largest entertainment empire in world history. Whether that comforts you or terrifies you, they try their hardest to flex just how much media they have dibs on. No matter what, I'll always think of the Disney animated canon when they come to mind, each of these 60-odd movies being worth millions of dollars and decades of childhood memories. So it alone is pretty risky to make a crossover out of. Kingdom Hearts skirts around this by only having the villains interact, but before that, Disney's first attempt at a mass crossover was the Saturday morning cartoon, House of Mouse. You'd think that for a concept as overwhelming as this, that it would be more popular and Disney would hype it up more, but no. It only ran for 2 years, has garnered a rather small cult following, and hasn't been mentioned by them in 12 years. You can watch full episodes on YouTube and they hardly do anything to stop them. Could they be ashamed of it? What is there to be embarrassed by? Even if it was the worst cartoon ever, it should be in their nature to keep it in the public eye. Crossovers are bigger than they've ever been, especially in a nostalgic sense. Who doesn't remember Cartoon Network City? Who didn't get excited for every Smash Bros. Character reveal? The answer to this is difficult to guess. All we can do is watch the show and wonder, how did it come to be in the first place? You all know Mickey Mouse, right? You all have some level of knowledge of his history? Then you'd know that, as his run of theatrical shorts ended in 1953, the reputation of the character slowly declined from a pioneer of the greatest aspects of animation to a generic, sanitized kiddie character. One grew up with a cheeky, energetic scamp, another grew up with a corporate mascot, and now we have this weird mix of the two. Up to and beyond the death of his co-creator, Walt Disney, in 1966, the company made no real effort to modernize the character or keep him relevant. Effort doesn't exactly mean attempt. This changed across the 80s, as the Walt Disney Company slowly transformed from a relic of a bygone era into capitalism incarnate. Mickey's personality was slowly more fleshed out again, starting with Mickey's Christmas Carol in 1983, and he was made a much more wacky, adventurous character again in the likes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit and The Prince and the Pauper. By the time the Disney Renaissance of the 90s rolled around, Mickey started to become a more visible multimedia star, but he wasn't back in a cartoon series full-time. The shows on the Disney afternoon block were very strict over what Disney characters appeared, so while Donald Duck and Goofy got some co-lead roles, Mickey was left in a dog cage in a Bonkers episode. Restrictions seemed to loosen somewhat come one Saturday morning, when after a few teasers in theaters across 1998 and 1999, a new animated Mickey Mouse series, the first in 46 years, premiered on ABC on May 1st, 1999, Mickey Mouseworks. Trying to fit in with the gnarly 90s, the promotional material claimed this was Mickey Mouse like you'd never seen him before. Because we've never seen him build a homemade airplane or wash cars. In actuality, Mickey Mouseworks was designed and developed by Bob's Ganaway to be a throwback to the original shorts, using the same color schemes, sound effects, and characters. Running only a year and a half, ending on December 9th, 2000, this new series proved successful, but needed a little more of a push. It wasn't the biggest cartoon on the planet, it wasn't even the biggest cartoon to premiere on May 1st, 1999, but on January 13th, 2001, it got that push. It was rebranded as House of Mouse, still run by Bob's Ganaway with the help of Tony Craig, and featured newer, much more lavish wraparound segments with a more consistent theme than 90s computer paint studio. But as enticing as this all was, ratings continued to decline for one Saturday morning, so after 2 seasons, it was moved to Toon Disney to air its remaining run of episodes until October 24th, 2003. This is all an example of both awkward marketing and awkward timing. If Mickey Mouseworks had been made a little earlier than the tail end of the Renaissance, and had a more substantial marketing push accurate to Ganaway's vision, I think it would have done a lot better and kept Mickey's image more consistent. He's back to being a squeaky clean neighbor in theme parks and merchandise, and as great as Epic Mickey and the Paul Rudish series are, they always feel disconnected from the image Disney wants to push for Mickey. They're the exception, not the rule. And that's a shame because I'm tired of Mickey being seen as a soulless corporate mascot. Mickey Mouse Works in House of Mouse proved for the first time in nearly 50 years that he could be a real character again with an entertaining string of adventures, so above all else, they need more love in that regard.
Are you guys here for the Three Candelabras show? In case you didn't know, I'm dating the third candelabra. You know it's Donald Duck, right?
Does he have a sister?
The classic Disney gang have set up a nightclub to perform and show off their cartoons. The guest list? Everyone. Virtually every character created or recreated by Walt Disney Animation Studios is present at some point or another, with a couple more from the rest of Disney's history popping up for surprise cameos. Keep in mind, however, that the entire show was produced in 2001, including the ones aired in later years, so the animated canon characters only go up to Atlantis: The Lost Empire. You aren't getting your Elsas or Nick Wildes here, but we have Hercules. If you've seen any of the TV adaptations of the Disney movies, you'd know they don't take themselves as seriously as their source material. They're typically just kids' comedy shows. There are exceptions, but you have to keep your expectations a little lower than with the movies. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs appear quite often, but none of their screen time has anywhere near as much whimsy or grandeur as the movie. The Disney characters tend to be parodied more often than they're used legitimately. This is innovative in a way, as this show premiered a staggering 3 months before Shrek hit the scene, but you shouldn't go into this expecting fully fleshed out, three-dimensional returns to form for each of these classic stories. If you want that, hedge your bets on Pocahontas 3 coming to video this holiday season. Because I'd be running through 6 decades of Disney characters, and more simple depictions of them at that, I won't go through literally every character that appears in House of Mouse, just the main Disney cast and how they're characterized here and in Mickey Mouse Works. With Mickey himself, I believe they did an excellent job shaping him into a more modern everyman. He tries out all sorts of schemes and side hustles, he makes mistakes and has a little bit of that mischievous streak from his formative years, but it's just enough to make the kids put themselves in his shoes and wonder what they would do in his situation. I really want to praise Wayne Allwine's performance too. There's never been a better Mickey. It's hard to take that trademark falsetto voice and give it all sorts of emotions, but Wayne somehow managed for longer and better than everyone else. Minnie Mouse has her most active role yet, being the house's manager and a more realized character all around. She also gets herself into crazy situations and has a slightly shorter temper than Mickey, so there's enough of a difference between the two that you can follow Minnie on her own and not regret it. Their original co-stars, Horace Horsecollar and Clarabelle Cow, return after decades of dormancy to supporting roles. Horace is the projectionist of the cartoons, and personality-wise continues to be goofy but not really goofy, while Clarabelle offers up gossip. This can provide both some fine jokes about what constitutes as gossip in Toontown, but also some flat, overdone gossip storylines. Still, there was a valiant attempt to modernize them. I don't know about this cow and dog ship teasing though. Pluto continues to be a good boy to Mickey. With his spotlights, they go back to his 40s and 50s outings, where he's more independent of his rodent owner, but still a dog who gets into dog troubles. This all worked back then, and it still works now. Goofy is the waiter of the club and continues to be a character best regarded for his physical comedy. Indeed, many of his shorts are the best looking ones just because of how much action and gags go into them. That being said, he's still got a brain, no matter how silly, and this was at a time when his son Max, now a parking valet, was still in the picture. So there's some fun father-son relationship moments that add that needed extra dimension. In a way, it feels like Donald Duck hasn't changed a bit since the 30s. He's still the short-tempered, down-on-his-luck anti-hero that the gang stays friendly with no matter what. I'm one of those special people who's always had trouble understanding him, but like Goofy, he's still a top-notch physical actor. Daisy Duck, on the other hand, was probably the most poorly handled of the classic lineup. They reworked her snobbish, uptight personality into making her more ditzy and naive before too long. It's annoying not just because it's annoying in the stories, but because they changed her up in the first place, when her original personality would have been totally fine with the right jokes. As it is, this incarnation of Daisy has her moments, As for some of the other characters, Pete is the primary villain of the House of Mouse segments, being a landlord always breathing down Mickey's neck. As long as the show goes on, however, he isn't a problem. This is a more sitcom-y showing than outright Villainous, but you've always got Jim Cummings delivering the goods. Huey, Dewey, and Louie are general mischief makers like in the old days, but also perform hip and relevant dances for the club. Yeah, there's a bit of Quack Pack hangover, but it's not that major. If you don't know who Ludwig von Drake is, how dare you? German duck scientist? He's kinda funny, but not really a show seller. His segments are pretty short anyway. Now, Mickey's rival, Mortimer, is just that, a really great rival. Depending on how they use him, obviously he didn't make it as far as Pete, still, he has his worth. Take a detour into the original Mickey Mouse works and the subsequent cartoon segments.
Wow, I was having the scariest dream. We were gonna get married.
These are pretty great. In terms of comedic tone and structure, they're more comparable to other late 90s cartoons like Dexter's Lab or The Angry Beavers than the original Disney shorts, but that's fine. They had to keep up with the times. The characters speak a lot more, which is useful for the stories and jokes they go for. Mickey listing off how much ham, cheese, and tomato is in his sandwiches is a different sort of gag from what you'd find in the early shorts, but there's still a laugh worth delivering. And they still have a lot of captivating physical sequences. The early shorts are respected pioneers in terms of their fluid and lifelike character animation, but Mickey Mouse Works is considerably zanier. They're treated more like cartoon characters. It's not a significant downgrade, it's just got a different feel, accentuated by the very quick switch from cell animation to digital ink and paint. Only 7 shorts were done on cells before they switched, and while I feel more comfortable seeing these characters on cells, in both cases, this is some darn good animation for 90s television. It's about on par with Animaniacs. Surprisingly enough, it was made in high definition, making it the earliest implementation of the format in TV animation that I know of. Not that anyone would have noticed during the series' run, of course. Alongside 7-minute cartoons, they also made much shorter subjects under a segment theme, one each for 5 of the main characters. And Von Drake for some reason. Mickey to the rescue. Mickey has to rescue Minnie from Pete's clutches. They only did 3 of these. They're fun little adventures, but you can't help but feel underwhelmed by how short they are. Donald's Dynamite is more fun, just Donald trying to get rid of some bombs and failing miserably. These are more efficient morsels. Goofy's Extreme Sports doesn't have as much of that timely toot as you'd expect. They're also just bite-sized Goofy shorts, with his easily agitated narrator and all. Pluto Gets the Paper is pretty fun too. Pluto has to go through all sorts of mayhem to fetch the newspaper for Mickey. Von Drake's House of Genius is my least favorite recurring segment. The idea's fun, but it always ends more or less with the same punchline. Von Drake isn't all he's cracked up to be. My favorites were the Maestro mini-segments. What if Fantasia 2000 was a farce? Minnie tries to compose classical music pieces, but her instruments have minds of their own. The concept's funny, and so are the plots. Besides these recurring shorts, the rest of Mickey Mouse Works was designed to be a grab bag. There isn't a consistent structure or theme to how the cartoons are sorted. One minute you're watching Goofy wakeboard, the next it's A Midnight Summer's Dream with Mickey and friends. I could imagine a reason this version of the show isn't circulated anymore is because it would be a headache to sort. Do you list them by the original 22-minute episode collections as they aired, or do you list each short individually for clarity? I hope to that they do the latter if they ever get recognized. They each stand on their own. Because they were shuffled about randomly on original broadcast, I don't see any major seasonal differences between 1 and 2, besides those cel-animated episodes in the first year, and sporadic cameos from a variety of Disney stars in the later episodes. You can tell they were planning for something big.
You know, the other day I saw a bug fishing. He said he hadn't had a bite, so I ate him. Thank you, thank you.
Now that joke was in bad taste.
From the very start, you can tell the writers were having a lot of fun with the toy box that Disney gave them. The first episode crams in as many characters as it can to show you how much business they mean. In terms of which characters they choose to have interact with the club staff, it's an even mix of the oldest of the old, the evil queen, Pinocchio, what have you, and the Renaissance era characters like Jafar and Timon and Pumbaa. The older they get, the more likely they're going to be a source of gags, given they'd already been parodied to death across the 20th century. You'll notice most of the Renaissance characters they spotlight are from movies that got spin-off cartoons. I guess because the DTVA writing team were familiar with what to do with them on the scale, except for Tarzan, but that was because their show was being made at the same time as House of Mouse. Probably kept them out of the way to avoid confusion or Tarzan oversaturation. As for the conflicts the main cast run into with running the joint, they set up the main sources of it pretty quickly. The clause in Pete's contract that the show must go on is put to the test as soon as the show starts, as is Donald's jealousy of Mickey's popularity and dream of owning the club. These are some of the most prominent setups for stories this season, so it's good that they established why they're so common very quickly, and in a way that kept Pete and Donald in character. As for brand new additions to the Disney canon, we've got a fresh face in the form of Mike, a sentient microphone that introduces and closes off each episode. It's always neat seeing someone's big break. Mike is surely gonna go places.
Salutations and greetings. How may I be of service?
Very good.
Thanks! Oh, where'd you go again?
The second season put more focus on the club staff and their problems. The various cameos are more of that, cameos. But to be fair, this is still a pretty good season if you don't mind the club angle on its own. There's only one episode all about a guest from another franchise, and even then it's about an unseen brother to King Louie. In general, the Xerox era was never treated kindly in House of Mouse. There's a running gag where Minnie can never seem to fit O'Malley and the Alley Cats into the schedule, which I always felt was at the expense of the Aristocats rather than in tribute to it. Winnie the Pooh also never gets a word in, but I guess that's because he was popular enough on his own. There was no need for him and Mickey to fight for screen time. A bigger focus was instead put on how the team interact with one another, and whether there's any need to improve that. The show's still very much episodic, these arcs don't carry on from episode to episode, but it's the thought that counts. One of my favorite moments from this season is in Max's new car, in which Goofy doesn't believe Max is mature enough to have a car. So, Max shows some clips of Goofy where he's no saint behind the wheel either, and they're from Motor Mania, a short from his George Jeef period. Hardcore Disney fans will get a kick out of them referencing that. Overall, they were getting more playful with the history of these characters, from showing a couple old school cartoons alongside the new ones, to making an episode about the club having a black and white rubber hose themed night. Season 1 felt like what was expected of the show, whereas Season 2 was more what it really wanted to do.
Maybe we should wait till the next act goes on. Who is it anyway?
The pink elephants.
Oh, no!
Season 3 is an even mix of the two, and sees the show bow out at a well-adjusted and creative high. It's another one of those super long Disney seasons that's basically half the show, but I think these episodes are still great on their own merits. The things they choose to reference are getting more obscure too, like everyone's favorite Humphrey the Bear, and the Araquan bird from the Three Caballeros, so they were squeezing as much as they could out of Disney's storied history to utilize. They even dedicate an episode to the seal from Mickey and the Seal. What a weird choice, guys. Do you use a roulette wheel too? You think if they got a season 4, they'd make an episode about that gun Daisy almost shot herself with? The only thing that told me they might have been getting tired is that 2 of the episodes are about Hades and what kind of trouble he causes Mickey and co. Given the genie never got an episode and he would have been an amazing source for a story, I feel like 2 Hades episodes were made because James Woods was easier to get than Robin Williams or Dan Castellaneta. I screw with Hercules, it's a very underrated movie, and these aren't the worst episodes. It's just strange that they made 2 of these in the same season. What's even stranger is that the first 18 episodes of season 3 all aired in a row in a massive 9-hour marathon. I haven't encountered anything like this before. There's huge hefty marathons, and then there's expecting viewers to have 9 hours of free time on a Monday. The remaining 8 episodes were spread out across 13 months. So I wonder if this plan didn't work. The show had already exited production by this point, and a potential succeeding movie to this shared Disney universe concept entitled The Search for Mickey Mouse was quietly abandoned. I'm surprised this idea actually existed at some point and isn't just some bad wiki fanfiction, but then again, this has existed for 20 years. House of Mouse was never released on home video, unless you count the 2 direct-to-video holiday specials. Snowed In at the House of Mouse is the weaker one of the 2, the story being laughably cheesy. Donald's not having a Merry Christmas, and Mickey literally wishes upon a star for things to be better. It's especially vapid when they then show Mickey's Christmas Carol as one of the cartoons, a Christmas cartoon with a much more direct and earned message. The Halloween movie, Mickey's House of Villains, isn't a whole lot better, but it's got a more interesting premise. The villains overtake the house on Halloween night. The song's a certified hood classic, but after this, the story loses a lot of its gravitas. Not its hook though, that stays firmly on the captain's wrist. Both of these specials also reuse gags from holiday-themed episodes of the show, so that's also a minus in their favour. Still, the show they spawned from was able to deliver the goods in the half-hour TV format. I'll split the best and least lists in 2 for this franchise, one set for the short format, and another for the House of Mouse episodes. Starting with the best shorts, The Nutcracker was one of a few select Mouse Tales shorts that were based on old stories and ran longer to tell them as dramatically as they could. I like this take on the old ballet. John Cleese's narration and Donald Duck as the Duck Rat King are the best things about it. Mickey's Mountain is a thrilling race between Mickey and Pete to claim a mountain, full of spot-on gags and a great sense of pace. How to Haunt a House is unique in that it was actually animated by Disney's feature animation division, which should explain the boost in animation quality. It's an instructional video on how to scare Donald Duck, it ought to come in handy. Pinball Mickey is an even mixture of adventure, as Mickey imagines a pirate pinball romp full of action and suspense, with a slice-of-life frame, that daydreaming is coming at the cost of his date with Minnie. You get fun, but also a lesson to spend your time with others wisely. Mickey and the Color Caper has our detective trio face off against the Phantom Blot, the thing the Shadow Blot from Epic Mickey's based on, as he's stolen all the color in Toontown. This feels like the transitional state for the character, where he's turning from a detective story antagonist to a full-fledged cartoon villain, and the way it plays with color is cool to see too. How to Be Groovy, Cool and Fly is a journey through late 20th century fashion with Goofy, exploring all the trends and attitudes that came and went from the 60s to the 90s. Sweet and simple, fun stuff. Donald's Goofy World is one of those episodes where the whole world starts turning into one character. And I mean, it's Goofy this time, as he's bothering Donald. How could you not enjoy this? Mickey's Mechanical House is a unique one in that it's again narrated by John Cleese, but this time in rhyme, and has Mickey face off against a 1950s UPA-inspired future house. Very fascinating watch. The Disney and UPA animation styles go together like bread and butter. Mickey's answering service is full of excellent Mickey, Donald, and Goofy shenanigans as they navigate a mysterious phone company. This is where the complex nobody discussion comes from, predating Kingdom Hearts, just so you know. A Midsummer Night's Dream is my favorite of the Mouse Tales. It's just so interesting seeing Mickey, Minnie, and the rest in such a story. You get the gist of the story as well as some good comedy with Goofy as Puck and promiscuity amongst mice and ducks. Mickey's Cabin is just some classic hijinks between Mickey, Pete, and his cousin Zeke. I wouldn't say just like old times, but it holds up well on its own against the early material. Computer.Dawn is reportedly the first time any of the main Disney characters have been animated in CGI, and what a way to start. It's also got some funny things to say about the hard parts of computer operation at the turn of the millennium. Some things never change, others do. Topsy Turvy Town is the one where Mickey and Minnie get stuck in a town that operates under Wonderland logic. The animation's great on this one too, as well as the ending. They didn't get what they deserved. Mickey Foils the Phantom is the Blot's debut into the Mouseworks world, and it's a thrilling tale across the world of Toontown and even into the air. It's the only extra-length short outside of the Mouse Tales brand, but it's still technically based on a book anyway. My favorite short is Hansel and Gretel, where Mickey and Minnie act out their titular roles in a silent adventure set to Dance Macabre. Not only is it a visual treat, but the music, the character, and the fantastic animation blend together to make this a gem of a Disney short, theatrical or not. As for a couple of the lesser shorts, Hot Tub Humphrey is kinda skippable in that none of the regular characters appear. It's only worth seeing if you're a massive fan of Humphrey, and I doubt he has a big fan base. The infamous Minnie takes care of Pluto, one of two that was taken out of rotation in the West for its darker tone. It's not great, I dare to call it underwhelming. It's more a case of them taking the imagery too far. If you want a dark Pluto story, he already went through Judgment Day in 1935. Pluto vs. the Watchdog also isn't the best Pluto short. I don't know, when Mickey gets mean with Pluto and goes so far as to replace him, it's a bit on the harsh side. Donald's Fish Fry is a Humphrey short. Next. Daisy's road trip is one grating pit stop after another, with Daisy bothering Mickey and Minnie as they just want to go on a date. It's not funny, and as much as Mickey yells at the end, the message doesn't get into Daisy's head. Waste of time, this one. If you were to ask me what the worst short was, I'd point to Double Date Dawn, where Clara Cluck decides one day to flirt with Donald to no end, annoying him and upsetting Daisy, and even getting to the point where she's willing to drown herself to get Donald's attention. I know cartoons had a darker sense of humor back in the 30s and 40s, but I'm surprised this one wasn't banned. Now on to the best House of Mouse episodes. Mickey and Minnie's Big Vacation is one of those where Donald and Daisy have to manage the House of Mouse, but Fawlty Towers-esque shenanigans ensue. It's also really shocking when they reveal where Mickey and Minnie were planning to vacate. It's such an odd choice out of everything you could pull from the Disney canon. Pluto Saves the Day is just that. Pluto saving the House of Mouse from certain slumber, after Pete poisons the rest of the staff with apples. It's also nice seeing his rivalry with Figaro set off his desire to save the club to earn his job back. Unplugged Club is a fun use of the Disney characters too. Pete sabotages the club's electricity, so they get Zeus's lightning bolt to power it. I guess religion isn't all bad. If the Greeks never worshipped Zeus, the House of Mouse would have been shut down 5 episodes in. House of Scrooge is the one where Scrooge becomes the club's landlord and pressures them to squeeze every penny they have. It's cathartic seeing the gang get back at him, but interesting seeing a Disney production on a tight budget. I feel like they could have gotten more meta here and made the animation cheaper, but they've got the Mickey Mouse Club logo to insinuate that. Jiminy Cricket is a tribute to my favorite movie of all time. It has to be on here. Pinocchio starts hanging out with Pain and Panic, so Mickey adopts Jiminy as his conscience. Things don't go well. While it does poke fun at the character, it also paints him as a respectable figure to the rest of the characters, and in turn the episode feels very respectful to the original movie and its cast. Ask Von Drake has a fun contest story, with Mickey betting there's nothing know-it-all Von Drake doesn't have an answer to. The main highlight being the climactic song number, which reveals where nearly everyone is seated. It's an example of how breathtaking the amount of cameos in this show is. Daisy's debut is the peak of a semi-story arc about Daisy wanting to perform on stage, but she generously offers her part in a duet she wrote to Minnie so she doesn't feel left out. As annoying as Daisy could be in this show, we did get this, and the duet is charmingly silly. Pete's House of Villains is what the direct-to-video movie should have been. It's a much better story, with Pete taking over the club and getting some of the villains to do the jobs. Plus, it has a better sense of humor about how to make conflict arise from this. It's just a fun idea, and shows the best House of Mouse episodes are those with the best ideas. On the other side of the coin, Humphrey in the House is more Humphrey. I don't think I'm breaking anyone's heart as I complain about these two characters. I'm sure their old shorts have some laughs, but they just weren't very funny here. Donald's Pumbaa prank reveals one of the difficulties in getting so many franchises together, in that they don't all mesh together tonally. Fart jokes are fine in Timon and Pumbaa, but throwing in all the other Disney characters makes it a ton more awkward. Super Goof has Goofy become a superhero, and the others seriously can't figure out who he is. It's not like they're playing along either, they just can't tell. It's weirdly confusing. And Mickey and the Culture Clash really bothers me because it's a relationship crisis between Mickey, Minnie, and Mortimer Mouse. The reason it's annoying to see in House of Mouse is that Walt Disney has confirmed that Mickey and Minnie are indeed married, but only behind the scenes. Well, here they are behind the scenes. This is their only official canon outing where they're married, and they really think they can convince me Minnie's thinking of breaking up with Mickey for Mortimer. I'm onto your tricks. It's a pretty shoddy finale, but hey, I got a surprising show from beginning to end. Surprising in how any sector of Disney was allowed to do this, surprising in how many good jokes you'll find, and surprising in the fact that it holds up to this day. Whenever I go back to it, I fear it'll come off as a huge gimmick made to exploit the images of all these beloved characters, considering the era it was made in. But this show ended up being a nice tribute to Mickey Mouse, who it's about, why it clicked with audiences, and what it inspired. Mickey Mouse Works and House of Mouse have their cult followings, but they've remained pretty obscure since House of Mouse's final episode aired in 2003, and disappeared from American airwaves in 2009. As of the time I've written this review, Disney's yet to put them on any sort of streaming service, and while there are rumors that they'll eventually turn up on Disney+, it's still a shame it's taken this long for there to be any sort of buzz surrounding it. It's been in the Disney Vault so long, it pretty much owns the joint, ironically enough. I guess we can only wait and see what happens to this show. Will it wither away in obscurity where it doesn't belong? Or can it make a triumphant return to regular circulation? Could a continuation with more modern Disney characters be possible? Never give up hope. It could all happen someday. If not, it'll always be a recommendation from me. There's a lot of material to choose from. Find yourself something nice. Goodbye for now.
Stay Nicktooned for the Wild Thornberrys. Coming up next, right here on the home of Nicktoons, Nickelodeon.